Okay, so my topic today is don't take it personal. And I'm not talking about brandy, something like it, but a little different. I know everybody's going to love this because so many times we go through things in life and we take people's actions towards us personal. Everybody goes through things, and you start to learn when you realize that everyone lives in their own world. I mean, even though we all interact with each other, if you really think about it, you have your own world that you live in. You have your own set of family, set of friends. You have your own set of circumstances. You have your own set of ideologies, certain ways that you're raised. You have your own set of traumas, hurts and pains, etc. You live your daily, day-to-day life, and only you do, not your friends or your family that you interact with at certain times. So once you think about that, you can try to realize that what people do really have nothing to do with you. And because their world is separate from yours, you can take yourself out of that equation and not always try to find an answer or blame yourself for why people do the things that they do, why they may treat you a certain way, why they may act a certain way. None of it has anything to do with you. I know it sounds crazy because sometimes people can piss you off, people can hurt you. It doesn't take away the fact that your hurt still exists, but it allows you to separate yourself from those person's actions. And I'm going to go into a little bit of why I'm saying what I'm saying. Some people, well, most people are battling things in their mind that you never know of unless they reveal that to you. We all have, things that we're processing, thinking about, or dealing with. Most people are led by their trauma or their past experiences. So each person has their unique journey that they've been through, and that actually leads them in life. It leads the way they love, it leads the way they forgive, it leads the way they see other people, and it just leads the way they interact with others in general. Even though we interact with each other, like I said before, we still have two separate lives. We have two separate experiences and perspectives on everything that we deal with or experience. And because we have different perspectives and mentalities, sometimes we clash. So, for example, if someone is in this world and they feel that they're not accepted, that they don't have support in life, that they're not wanted, they're not appreciated in life, then they're going to act a certain way, and their interactions with people are going to reflect that. So to the opposite of that, if you have someone that feels like they are supported and that they're loved and that, just that they have what they need to drive them in life, their perspective is going to be different, and their interactions with people are going to reflect that also. And you can tell that with different people. If you are experiencing anger from someone who feels alone, then your experiences with them are going to be a byproduct of that loneliness. Now, of course, you're not going to know that all the time. Most times you don't. But you may be wondering why that person responds a certain way to you or why they treat you a certain way. It's because of what they feel inside themselves, and that is the interaction that you get with them. So their actions are a reflection of the unresolved issues within themselves. So, for example, if your parents haven't been there for you maybe the way you want them to, they don't acknowledge you, they don't give you the love that you need, or maybe you've been abused in life by someone you know or someone you trusted, or so many scenarios where we've experienced trauma. More likely than not, those same people who probably have abused you or caused you trauma have also experienced trauma which has not been addressed, which is the root of it all. But knowing that allows you not to have someone to continue to abuse you, of course you don't want to do that. But that allows you to separate yourself from what has happened to you, to one, understand why, and know that it's not you, and also to have compassion for that person, to know that they are dealing with some other things outside of themselves, which is causing them to treat you a certain way. So we have to be reminded that their world is their world, and their interactions with you or with anyone else is based upon the work that they may or may not have done, or the self-work rather, on their self, their trauma, their life, their, all of that. Their interactions with you are going to be based upon that. Also, how they've learned to communicate with others up until this point in their life. So if they haven't done that self-work, or they haven't been taught and tried to find out how to communicate in life, then there's going to be another reflection there. Not only are they not going to be able to communicate effectively, but they're not going to be able to articulate their true feelings to you or anyone else that they're having a connection with. And they're not going to be able to know within themselves as well what they're feeling, why they're feeling it, and why they're doing certain things as well. They're not going to know that. So I'm going to use a short, quick example of that from my personal life. So as many of you may know, I lost my mom at a young age at 15, and actually it took me a long time, a couple years ago, for me to realize that I was dealing with trauma and hurt and pain from all the things that I've been through in life. And a good friend of mine who has been there for me and with me on my journey, at the time, me and my girlfriend, we were really close. I loved her and her family, and we would have Thanksgiving every year, and everyone would come together. We would call each other and say, hey, what are you going to bring? We're going to be there at 6 o'clock or whatever. So for some reason, I wasn't feeling my best. So some holidays I'd be feeling like great, and I'm so happy to be around people and happy that God gave me other people that are not blood, that are family to me. But sometimes I don't feel like being with anybody. And at the time when she asked me, I said to her, I'm not going to go. That's your family. That's not mine. And I didn't go. And she was shocked apparently. I didn't know at the time, but she said okay. She had Thanksgiving, her and her family, without me, and I never heard anything else from her about that. We went on with our day. I talked to her the next day, whatever the case may be. 10 years down the road, me and her have a disagreement, and she brings up the fact that I didn't come to the Thanksgiving dinner that she invited me to. And she says, you never came to the Thanksgiving dinner. My family has been there for you, and you told me that's your family. And she told me that that actually was hurtful to her, and I had no idea. Now, this story is important and it's relevant because at the time, I had not done the self-work. I was young. I was in my 20s or so. I had never had any counseling, any therapy, never talked about trauma, never even knew that I was going through trauma and pain, never even knew that at the time I was actually depressed. All I knew was that I was in pain and I was hurting. I cried my eyes to sleep that night. But when she told me 10 years later that she was so upset, it was a shock for me because I was like, you never told me that you were hurt. And second of all, this is like 10 years later that you've been holding this in all this time. And I tried to explain to her that had nothing to do with you. And I apologized for hurting her feelings. But I completely thought that because she knew basically my whole life story, that she would understand why I said what I said, or maybe even recognize the red flags, quote unquote, that I was probably depressed or that I was probably hurting. But she actually had no idea. So even though she knew my story, she still did not live in my world. So at the end of the day, we interacted with each other, but we still, at the end of the day, had two separate worlds. So I was living in my world, feeling depressed, feeling anxious, feeling hurt, not knowing how to express myself, not knowing what was going on, not wanting to be around her family and see her and her mother hugging and kissing and loving each other, because it felt like it was a reminder to me of what I didn't have at the time, even though they became my family. Okay, so I did explain that to her after the fact when she brought it back up to me, but that really just, drove home to me when I was thinking about this whole thing, because, at the end of the day, we still live in separate worlds. And even though she knew my story, as I said before, she still had no clue of what I was really going through. And because I did not do this self-work yet, I had no clue on how to articulate that to her, how to explain to her what I was feeling. I was embarrassed to even say it, and I wasn't even sure what I was feeling or what I was going through. Fast forward 15 or so years later, now I understand, or 10 years later, however long it is, now I understand, what I was going through, and I recognize it even now when it happens to me in other scenarios, when I start to feel a heaviness, or I feel like I miss my mother, or I don't want to be around other people that God has brought into my life. And, the important takeaway from that is, again, don't take personal what people do to you. Of course, you don't allow anyone to abuse you, but you must remember that people's actions really have nothing to do with you. Even if they directly hurt your feelings, it's probably based upon something else. It's a domino effect, Sometimes certain things trigger certain people to do certain things. Sometimes people hurt people because they're hurt. Sometimes people hurt people out of anger. There's so many scenarios, but we got to remember that nothing that anyone does really has, basis to do with us. It is based upon the world that they live in. Sometimes we spend our whole life wondering why someone doesn't love us, why, they treat us the way they do. Why did this person do this? Why am I the black sheep of the family? Why does no one understand me? Why does no one love me? Why does people maybe don't accept you for who you are? Whatever that may be. Those things can play and play and play on your mind. You can spend your whole life, still hurt and thinking about things that happened when you were 6 years old. Trying to figure out a why, trying to understand a why, because you want to attach yourself to it, when really it has nothing to do with you. At the end of the day, we are all operating from our level of healing. I'm going to say that again, because it just blew my mind. We are all operating from our level of healing. So I operate from my level of healing. You operate from your level of healing, your friends, your family, your mother, your father, your boss, even your enemy. So when you think about that, it puts another perspective on life. You're still going to go through things, and things are still going to be challenges, but it makes it easier and allow you to separate yourself from what you experience and have compassion for those people. Nothing that happens in your life is a basis on something that you did. Unless you really did something, then that's another story. But for the majority of that, all of our reactions are based upon our healing. So the more you do your self-work, the more you understand others, the more you understand yourself, the more you're able to put words into what you're feeling, why you do certain things you do, and on and on and on. So I thought that was just something great. It was a great takeaway from me. Don't take it personal. So you share that message with somebody, and remember, don't ever, ever take it personal. Love you guys.